watching, just west-northwest, and you can kind of see that as it does pass to the south of the Cayman Islands. Very destructive winds coming into this region, but we're not getting any confirmed reports as of yet.
We knew it was coming our way, but hardly anyone was prepared for the damage and devastation Hurricane Ivan left in Grand Cayman. Mr. Donovan Ebanks was the deputy chairperson of the National Hurricane Committee 10 years ago. He recalls the hours before Hurricane Ivan struck Grand Cayman and discusses the aftermath.
I think if you look back at it, you'll find that it was why we tend normally to only issue a watch and a warning. It's the only system that I recall in my years of being involved in the National Hurricane Committee that we actually issued an alert when the system was more than 48 hours out. It was just that level of concern that the thing just had an ominous amount of potential to it in terms of when we actually realized that we were going to get it. I mean, up until, I would think up until even Friday, early Saturday, I mean, there was still the potential of it going on a slightly different course, and as you recall, it took a little sort of roundabout swerve around Jamaica. So it was probably, I mean, the real realization that you were going to get it was probably not until Saturday. But obviously, all your all your concerns had been awakened long before that. Sunday was a long and battering day, and late on the Sunday night, we let some of two of the larger fire vehicles head out from the fire station and head east. They were only able to get up towards the top of Linford Pearson Highway, and there was just too many utility poles and lines and whatnot. And they came back, and it was sort of like, sending the first bird out from the ark, and you suddenly realize that if it's that, if those reports obviously are correct, then there's a potential for a lot of damage.
Caribbean Utilities Company Limited, CUC, the sole provider of electricity on the island, was, like most companies, badly hit by the hurricane. Although the company had developed a plan and prepared for the possibility of a hurricane hitting the Cayman Islands, there was nothing that could have prepared us for the experience of being in a Category 5 hurricane. CUC's president and CEO, Mr. Richard Hughes, speaks to the company's preparations for the hurricane.
We were very prepared for it. I think we had covered just about every eventuality, from the wind speeds and the water levels, the sea surge. But when you actually experience it and saw it, I don't think anything can prepare you for being in the middle of a Category 5 hurricane. It was personally a lot more than I imagined it would be.
Over 500 poles were down, wires broken and mangled, and vehicles flooded beyond repair. At first glance, it seemed like it was all lost. Mr. Hugh recalls his initial reaction to the damage he saw the day after.
It was very clear within a few 100 feet of the plant, the number of poles that were down, it was very clear that we had a major job ahead of us without me seeing the rest of the island.
Getting Grand Cayman back to a sense of normalcy and calming the natural fears of residents and visitors would not be an easy task. Immediate steps needed to be taken to get key businesses and services back up and running.
Ivan, you must understand, was a recalibration event. I mean, none of us, no one around. My mom was in her late 80s. When you talk to people who were that age, 80, 85, 90, I mean, it was an experience that no one in Cayman had ever had before. And so our abilities to imagine and project what may have happened just had never been put to the, to that level of estimation. We just didn't have the background to be able to do it. I recall Kirkland Nixon, the chief fire officer at the time and the coordinator for the National Hurricane Committee. He and I headed out, I guess 8, 9 o'clock on the Monday morning and wandered through Industrial Park, heading in the direction of CUC. Hopped into Public Works. I stole a dump truck because I needed a vehicle. Fortunately, someone had left a truck with keys in it, so we were able to take that. And came on down to here to see what the state of play was down here. Obviously, you'd had some flooding in your engine rooms and whatnot, but structurally you were in pretty good shape. And so, because everything is diesel powered, we were optimistic that diesel equipment can reasonably survive.
Knowing that the task before them was going to be mammoth, the management team agreed at its first meeting that every effort would be made to get power restored in a safe and efficient way as quickly as possible. The island and its people could not start to get back on their feet if businesses remained closed and homes were without power.
The first week, I think, was the ultra critical. I mean, that was a major crisis. There were security issues. No one had power besides those with standby generators, and it was critical for us to get power on to the critical services within the first few days, and certainly within the first week. And then after that, there was more assessment done. We covered the entire island, had a damage assessment, an estimate of how much time and resources were required to restore power in those areas, and then we went about prioritizing so that we got maximum benefit in terms of customers restored with minimal effort. So that's the way we went about it. We had a schedule initially for 90 days. I think the public thought that we would be lucky, and certainly when we first did our assessment, we thought we would be lucky to have electricity throughout the island for Christmas. But when we did our assessment, it came down to 90 days, and I think we completed in 75 days. So we were ahead of schedule and happy with that result.
With the majority of the island without electricity, it was important to get a quick assessment of the damage and to get crews together to begin the cleanup and restoration process. And in order for CUC to start the rebuilding of the power plant, it was necessary to get outside assistance, human resources, and equipment.
The first person I spoke to from the outside world was the president and CEO of Fortis Inc., our major shareholder. And this was by satellite phone. I was here at the plant. And the reception wasn't very good. It was coming in and out, and all I could make out from him was he asked the question, "How bad is it, Richard?" And I said, "It's bad as it can get, we need help." And that was the last conversation I had with Stan for some time. But within days, they had a crew of over 75 linemen, supervisors, technicians, ready to come in, and they had arranged a charter flight with they chartered a plane from Air Canada, And unfortunately, they couldn't get in within the first few days because the airport was still not able to take the planes. But within a week, it was a week to the day actually, the Saturday following, the plane landed with assistance from the outside. In Hurricane Ivan, we were fortunate to have line crews come from Provo Power in Providenciales, Belize Electricity in Belize, Barbados Light and Power, and also from Bermuda Electricity Company. And they came in and they would be assigned an area to do the reconstruction work with their supervisor. And once they'd completed that reconstruction, one of our supervisors would go and inspect it, and then we would re-energize that area. And they would move on to assist in other areas.
With wires mangled, poles down, and a large number of transformers tossed and turned, the line crew had quite a task. Crews were organized into several groups. Line supervisors joined the transmission and distribution planners to survey the damage, while some of the line crews started clearing the downed power lines from the plant outward. The others were sent to retrieve those vehicles, which had been placed on high ground prior to the storm. Gary Whitaker and Jerry Holness were among many on the front line.
When I looked out and I could see, the stuff that was level, I could probably see 4 miles up the road, and I didn't see that before. I got out on the road and we had a contractor crew in, so we got contact with those. There was so much people out on the road and started doing surveys and tried to get their equipment because they were at Frank Sound Sub into town so we could work from here, come out. We had a problem with people on the road. We had to actually put on flasher, blow horns to get people out of the way. But when I looked at the damage, I said I think it'll be a fairly long time before we really recover, but I think we did pretty good overall.
The next morning I came to the plant. I had to work my way down because there was no transportation. Coming here, seeing the damages along the way, I knew that we were in for a big challenge to get past what had happened. So I came to the plant and met with Richard, Mr. Hugh, and we started inquiring about what was needed to get going.
And at the height of the restoration, there were approximately 4 times the number of CUC's linemen on the ground assisting. To ensure everything went smoothly, the managers and certain supervisors met every day during the restoration period. Overseas crews were rotated every 2 to 3 weeks, which ensured that the high momentum was maintained.
By working with our hurricane plan, we obviously knew we had to get the hospital on the airport. So we met, we got everybody there, we followed the plan, we went out and, in a couple of days' time we had Georgetown back on, which is a great achievement. But fortunately this area wasn't that damaged as the outer districts.
But getting power restored safely and as quickly as possible would not be without its challenges, which included the lack of transportation and shipping delays. Manager of Materials Management Ron Parchment remembers.
You may recall, Florida was also hit, and Florida was our key location for getting materials, especially transmission distribution materials, such as overhead conductor, transformers, pole line hardware, utility poles, etc. So there was no materials available in Florida at that time, so we had to bring in 3 chartered planes from Panama with conductor, 3 727s. And that's when it all started, and we were able to put the crews back to work. We did have some stock, such as transformers and the other items I mentioned, but not sufficient based on the devastation we had. The critical commodities during the recovery stage and restoration was transformers and overhead conductor. Our partners in Laurel, Mississippi, Howard, worked with us. They put their crew working around the clock to manufacture transformers, and based on our specs. They knew our specs, and we chartered a vessel, and we put that vessel in Tampa. That was the most strategic location. and they trucked the transformers from Laurel, Mississippi to Tampa to meet our charter vessel. And we had other key suppliers delivered to that vessel. So then it all started to flow based on our needs. But transformers were the most commodity in demand at that time.
As stated earlier, getting power back to the critical services and restoring power to customers' homes were key priorities for CUC. And it took lots of patience and understanding from all involved. Dana Smith and Angela McLean remember what it took to reassure customers that the crews would soon be getting to their area.
When I first came back to work, it was like just the devastation of Ivan. Trying to get back everything back in order was it was difficult. It was you had pressure coming from customers, everyone coming complaining no power. You couldn't get a solid answer from when power will be restored, just to restore, trying to get everybody back up. It was very difficult, and trying to hold back your emotions and trying to deal with your personal side and cope with work. It was very challenging.
There were some customers that found it very challenging, and it varied across the island depending on the area they were in, of places that were hit hardest. But the communication, as in how we communicated with the field workers and, to be able to communicate back to our customers, we were using radios and so forth. So we did have some sort of communication avenue opened, but as Angie said, it was very challenging.
As was the case with many persons on the island, a number of CUC employees lost their homes or had to deal with significant damage to their properties.
We prepared as best we could by stacking items on cupboards, beds, and counters. We watched as the water began rising outside. It covered our porch, and then it was up to our windows. The back door gave in to the pressure, and we could do nothing to hold back the flow. It sounded like a river running through our house as we took shelter in the attic. It was up to 4 feet in a few hours, and then crested at 5 feet 3 inches. I measured the watermark on our wall sometime afterwards. It was the longest day ever in our attic, tired of battling the elements and waiting for help and the storm to blow over.
We could literally hear the house being torn apart as the shingles and guttering peeled away with the wind. Our ceiling sheetrock cracked as the pressure in the house slowly built up and the winds pummeled the doors and boarded windows. One by one, the windows shattered or were loosened by flying debris. The water outside rose quickly, and we soon had nearly a foot inside as it came through the plumbing and under the doors. We jumped on our countertops and table and watched with disbelief as the water destroyed everything. It was an experience I will never forget, truly horrifying.
At least six feet of salt water in the house. The computer had moved from the computer room into the sitting room. The fridge was lying across the floor, which was standing, was just lying across the floor. Shoes that were in the front room was way in the back room, outside, actually outside, floating in the water.
Rising waist-deep water was our biggest concern. It started coming through the sides and under the doors and the drain in the bathtub and sinks. We piled up on the kitchen counters looking to keep dry. We could hear the zinc sheets on the roof being peeled away to the point where we could look up and see the sky. Luckily, the only part of the roof and ceiling that stayed intact was directly above the kitchen, so we were safe for now. We made our way to the garage through the receding waters. The cars were flooded, but we soaked up the standing water and covered the seat. What a relief it was to finally rest our weary bodies on soft seats.
5 hours of bailing water was my sole task that fateful Sunday. As the storm surge came in, I watched in shock as my neighbor's car slowly disappeared beneath the murky water. It was hard to believe how quickly the water was rising outside. It had to be nearly 6 feet deep. In no time at all, I had 4 inches of water throughout my downstairs as the water seeped in under the front door and through the dry vent in the utility room. Bailing and prayer were the only things keeping the water from rising inside my apartment. It's hard to relive what we experienced.
Yet these and many other employees showed up for work, ready to make whatever contribution they could to get their company and country up and running. What can I do to help? Was the question they asked.
I think CUC staff, and I can't speak for other electric utilities, but certainly CUC staff over the years have a sense of duty to serve 24 hours and do whatever it takes to get the power on. So I must say they responded extremely well. Some had their own personal challenges with losing their homes, and they had to relocate. We assisted by finding for some of them that required it hotel rooms, and it was a very difficult time for a lot of the staff, but they responded very well.
The company set up a kitchen on location to ensure that there were hot meals for the crews and made other amenities available to employees and their families. Marlene Galbraith and Emily Pearson remember.
I came into CUC, and when I saw what happened here, that was another thing I had to endure. We decided we're going to cook and all these sort of things for the people that's working, because there was nowhere to get food. So we had to get a police permission to come in like 4 o'clock in the morning to be on the road at that time, because there was a curfew. And we started to come in 4. On the road, coming into town, you didn't know where you were. It was a shock coming out that time of the morning. It was all dark when you reached by Jose. You didn't know where to go. Anyway, go on. Every morning you'd come down 4 o'clock making porridge and food and whatever for the staff that's working. Those guys doing on the road to get people connected.
Well, the number one priority for me was taking care of our staff by assessing to see what kind of damage each employee had. We were giving out loans for employees who had damage to their houses, who needed generators, salary advances, giving them accommodations if necessary. Took employees to the doctor who needed to go, who were hurt. And CNB was also giving out we had some terms and conditions with CNB. CUC was guaranteeing loans for them for car loans.
Block by block, pole by pole, wire by wire, and the beautiful sounds of the engines revving again. CUC and Grand Cayman were rebuilt and restored.
One of the things that all of us who have an interest in this area have to do is try to keep reminding people, because there's obviously the natural tendency for our awareness to gradually wear off. There are more, people we have somewhat of a transient society. We get people here who'd never experienced it. So it's good to remind people, and I'm hoping that over the next month or so, a lot of that rather shocking, I wouldn't call it gory, but shocking footage of the devastation gets redistributed in photos and videos, and people are reminded that when you hear of heart systems, this is the potential of what they can do. We'll just assume that it may happen somewhere else. It can happen here too.
10 years later, some wonder, did Ivan really happen? Yes, it did. And what did we learn as a result of the experience?
I think Ivan was a great educator in the fact that we can be seriously, physically knocked around by a hurricane. We'd never seen that amount of damage. We'd had systems come by. We'd had Gilbert in '88 come by and brush us up a bit. But Ivan really showed us that we can be taken and shaken and kind of put in a pile of rubble too. I think there was also a lesson that we can survive a hurricane. There's really no reason in today's society, with the type of facilities we have, with the warnings we get, there's really no reason people get injured. There's no reason for anybody to get killed. So I think that was a confidence builder in that regard?
As a company, we have strengthened, I think, our relations overseas with suppliers. So, you know, we a lot. I mean, it confirmed, the hurricane confirmed to us what we knew and what we had devised as a plan of resiliency coming out of the threat, the near miss we had with Hurricane Gilbert. And I think there was a study done at the time that for a Cat 5 we would see around 8.5 to 10 feet tidal surge. So we had built everything since 1988 above the floodplain, but there are little things you forget, like our small vehicles. You know, we parked as many of those as we could at high ground, but we lost a lot of small vehicles. So initially we were scrambling for transportation, and so we have a better plan for that now. I think the communications went fairly well, so we learned some lessons there, and on estimating how long it will take. I think it's very important to keep communicating with the public and setting expectations and you know, reassuring them that there is a plan and schedule and we are making progress along that plan. Prior to Hurricane Ivan, we had started building our transmission systems out of concrete poles and indoor substations, and those, if you would recall, on the south coast from Boddentown to Frank Sound, I mean, there was utter devastation. The trees were just about all leaves were gone anyway, and most of the trees. And but the thing that was standing was you know, our concrete poles, and so they stood up extremely well. And for our transmission system, that is a standard today. And we have built since then another line from Frank Sound to Rum Point, you know, with using the concrete poles. So that will serve us well in the future should we have another major hurricane.
In September 2004, Hurricane Ivan came and left behind a trail of destruction, despair, and anxiety. No water, no electricity. In the aftermath, spirits were revived, hope was renewed, new friendships were made, and communities came together to rebuild.
Ivan, I think, brought out the best in a lot of people. You know, it put a lot of us through experiences that we would never want to have again. But I think it provided an opportunity for a lot of people to demonstrate abilities, both in how they interact with other people, and how they share and how they care, and also in how they perform. People perform well above what we would have expected of them.
Take a look around, and you may never know that Ivan hurtled through Grand Cayman with wind speeds of 150 miles per hour. Those who experienced Ivan won't forget September 11th and 12th, 2004. Neither will CUC and its employees. We have recovered since Ivan. We rebuilt since Ivan. We are stronger since Ivan. We have survived Ivan.
On this 10th anniversary, I think it's something they can look back on and be very proud of how they served this company and the country as a whole.